This is the Atari 8-Bit Podcast.
This is Kevin Savitz, and this is an interview episode of Antic, the Atari 8-Bit Podcast. W. Sean Hennessy worked in the Consumer Electronics Division of Atari from April 1982 through March 1984, where he developed Realsports Tennis for the Atari 800 and 5200, and created the version of Centipede for the 5200 and Pengo for the 800 and 5200. He also worked at The Software Machine, a company that was working to create edutainment software for the Atari and other platforms. This interview took place March 1st, 2015.
I understand that you worked at Atari, you were a video game software engineer, and you did some work on both Atari 800 and 5200 stuff.
Correct. Primarily, it was the 5200, and then we translated the 5200 to the 800, typically after the 5200 release.
All right. I have questions about that. But first, how did you get hired at Atari? How did you get started there?
Well, my history in video games started at Sega Kremlin down in San Diego, which is a coin-op Z80-based manufacturer. They did titles like Astro Blaster, Carnival, and my favorite, which was Eliminator, which was a 4-player stand-around. They did cocktails, and I worked at Sega Kremlin for about a year and a half before corporate restructuring, and we had issues with one of the video XY monitors initially, and there was a problem with the monitor. I remember us having to take apart all the games and having to resolder in a resistor on what was an Electro Home, I think it was, the manufacturer. Anyway, Sega Kremlin moved, and then George Kish, the guy that hired me at Sega Kremlin, left and went to run the Consumer Electronics Group's console group, and he left about 6 months before I got a call, and he said he had a place for me up there. I was big.
But before we move on to Atari, I'm curious what games you worked on at Sega Kremlin.
None that got released. I generated probably about a dozen game designs for various topics. And then I was working on prototype of something that was called, what was it, Bebop. It was, basically we wanted to target different demographics. So, we wanted to reach out to other players. So I came up with Bebop, a little cuter theme, bees running around pollinating flowers to... and there was another, like a tail gunner type of, almost like Tempest, but for raster screens instead of XYs, and this, of course, was way before that. Right. So we'd prototype for a while on the Z80 architecture box that we had. But what happened is they bought all these XY monitors thinking that was going to be the end-all new technology, that was going to make them big money, and they did Space Fury. Say that the fellow that did Space Fury, and the other one was Eliminator, were the two color XY monitor games that was going to make Sega Kremlin, big money. Mm-hmm. And then the monitors themselves failed in the field. Quite a lot of the units were failing. And so, a lot of the operators were returning the product, which is a big crisis for Sega Kremlin. So just about everybody in the shop went next door to a new production line that they set up, and all we did 24/7 as much as people could work 24/7 to pull the monitors out of the chassis and then resolder a new resistor in the box and package it all up and hopefully send it back to the operators. But I don't think they recovered from that. And but basically the focus as a result of the guy upstairs, I forget what management fella decided that, he was going to bank the company on that new XY monitor. So all of our focus was on, we got to crank out these games and use up all this inventory that they bought. So
that monitor, I'm sorry to interrupt, that monitor is still known as evil, infamous, unreliable, flaming piece of garbage.
Well, it was just, what happened is, we had a really sharp engineering team at Sega Kremlin, and I think they identified that, the part, where it was failing was, from the vendor, the supplier of this XY monitor, but they couldn't fix the problem fast enough for the Sega Kremlin customers, right? So we took it on ourselves to do the retrofit. And, it's like anything new. Somebody used a part out of spec. They didn't do the math. It's electronics and can be kind of tricky sometimes. So,
yeah. Okay, so you were laid off there, or your friend?
We were all looking pretty hard at that point because we saw the writing on the wall. Sega moved out from the facility at on Arrow Drive in San Diego to a really nice brand new facility up in I think it was RB, purpose built. But a lot of us were already looking out the door, and when I got in contact with George Fish, and he said, he had something that he wanted me to do up at Atari because I was a big tennis fiend, and he wanted me to write a tennis game for them. So that's what brought me up to Atari.
Okay.
And it was a bit, I was fairly new. It was quite a very select team up there, and because I was George was the new guy there as well, and he brings me in from outside, to mix in with the crew, and it was an interesting situation, but I was well received. I think after about 6 months, I think there
was an established crew working on 5,200 games, and then you're the new guy. And
well, a lot of the folks that I was in with, they were the 2600 folk, Howard Warsaw, and Rob Zadibble, Bob Polero, Carla Maninsky, and Todd Fry. A lot of great guys. There was the new folk were given the 5200 title to write for, primarily because we were the low guys on the totem pole, so we got to write titles for a platform that really hadn't an established market compared to the 2600. So, well, we were, I just loved what I was doing.
Now, at that point, when you got there, you knew Z80. Did you know 6502 assembly?
No.
So you had to learn that on the job?
Yep. Didn't take long. I mean, I was very well instructed. Barbara McCulloch, Gary Shannon, Steve Hostetler, Larry Clegg from Sega Kremlin. Gary Shannon and Barbara, taught me quite a bit, actually. I was mentored by them and learned pretty fast, and after a while, I was contributing there enough to be recognized as, I guess, someone who had I don't know. I guess I had an enthusiasm for what I was doing. I really loved it. I took to it pretty well. So, the challenges of working on new chips, poking them around like the new sound chips or the video graphics chips, So I took to it and I learned pretty well. So.
Okay. So tennis was the first thing that you started on?
That was the first project I was assigned in midstream of the tennis title. I was retasked to work on the Centipede conversion because it was way past deadline, and they needed to bring that in so that they could, get a title of that kind of brand, as it were, to help support the 5200 sales. So I was working with the guy who had started the title and was having some difficulty. I was not very well received, of course. It only came to my attention that George had pretty much asked everybody else before he asked me to do it, to help the guy. So then it was like 48 hours on before I went, so I was on a really heavy-duty crunch schedule to get that done. And we managed to get the title done and finished and out, and then I got back to the tennis title.
So in Centipede, you said it was conversion. You were converting from the 800 version or from some other completely different?
The coin-op. It was the fella, Frank Hausman, is that his name? Yeah. He was given a listing from the coin-op version, which I think was originally done by, I want to say, Donna Bailey. And so Frank was fairly new at it, I think, as well. And so he didn't really get started on the conversion when he was first given the opportunity to work on it. I think he was, I'm not sure what the story was. And I should probably not say because not knowing it. But anyway, he didn't get as far along as he had wanted as far as the schedule was when I came on board. So he'd already keyed in a lot of the code verbatim from the listing from the coin-op title, but in a coin-op version of a game, you've got the orientation of the back then, the monitor was the aspect ratio. If there was an upright, what they called upright versus non-upright. So basically, if you take a TV and turn it 90 degrees, then it becomes a different orientation. And when you do that, the aspect ratio of the pixels changes quite a bit as well. Mm-hmm. And he didn't allow for that. So, the screen space on a regular TV, of course, you take a coin-op game and slide the monitor sideways like we look at a regular TV, and the aspect ratio changes. So we had to do quite a bit to restructure the code so that it would operate correctly in that orientation, and that's something that Frank didn't allow for. So that's where I came in and fixed up the segment motion for the Centipede so that it would look right, it would stay together when it would turn, and things like that, if I remember correctly. So it was a very interesting and very crunch, stressful, pressure, all that mixed into to the project. So we had our clashes, we had our personality issues associated with the project, but at the end of the day, we got it done and everybody was happy.
Awesome. All right, so you did Centipede, and then you went back to Realsports Tennis.
Correct, and finished that, and that was the first chance that I got to do the 800 conversion with Centipede. They packaged the finished code for the 5200 and sent it to the home computer guys, and they did a conversion themselves, which was effectively swapping out the controller module, because the 5200 was an analog joystick and the 800 was a regular switch joystick,
right.
More like 2600. And so some of the timing and some of the controls was a bit different. So prior to the tennis, we just sent them the code, and consumer home group did the conversion, but that amounted to another 10 grand in bonus money that we were giving away. So
how so? By making the other team do the do the conversion, or?
Yeah, we were giving up 10 grand of the project bonus when we did that.
I see. But if you did it yourself, then you would get the bonus.
Correct. So with the team that I worked with on the tennis game, and I think it was Jolly was the animator, and Andrew Fuchs was the audio guy, and myself being the programmer. So there was effectively 3 people, and I had I learned from the 2600 people that the project team allocation of bonuses and whatnot was fairly new. And what I did was, I cut the audio and the graphics people in on the project tool, so that I had a ready and willing list of people who wanted to work with me, because I was a little more generous than the other team.
Nice.
So I got. So when we did the conversion for the 5200 ourselves, we kept more in the pot for ourselves, basically. So that's what drove that. So I did the 5200 bit for the little fuzzy. I may have only done it for Pengo. I can't remember if I did it for tennis as well. But
so you said something interesting before. You said you always did the 5200 versions first and then converted to the 800. But do you know why it happened in that direction? Was it because the 5200 was the priority, or?
Well, it was just, I think, primarily because of the instrumentation available to us for the console. To develop the console, we had an embedded systems, with an in-circuit emulator and a logic analyzer as well. So it was a highly instrumented development environment for the 5200. And also because we had a lot more horsepower, doing the PDP-11 behind, which was the cross compiler, basically.
Right.
Cross assembler, excuse me. I didn't start doing C compilers until probably about 2 years after I started there at Atari.
So what was a challenge on doing the tennis game? I mean, I'm watching a video of it now. There's the shadow on the ball. Looks like it might have been tricky, and the animation is pretty awesome. So I mean, what was for the resolution that we had to bring to bear on doing a simulation like that, it was rather tricky. I had in my mind. Probably step back a little bit. At Sega Kremlin, we didn't have an art department like I got at Atari. I thought I was spoiled rotten when I got to Atari, and I actually had, artists, graphics artists, doing the graphics for us. Whereas before, we'd get out our graph paper, we draw something on graph paper and color up the dots and then translate the colored dots into hex code, which we then keyed in by hand, to get the graphics. To do the cell animation by hand was extremely tedious. When I got to Atari, and lo and behold, they had their own little graphics tool built on the 800, and we actually have artists, so working with people like Dave Jolly and Mimi, Jerome Demurit and Marilyn, and had a great. So basically, what happened is, I'd sketch up what I thought, would play, for the court, the shadow on the ball, and was one of the few ways that you could actually
track where the ball was going, and then you add the height delta to it, as far as the projectile motion, which is basically what the ball was doing. Mm-hmm. So there was a little bit of target tracking associated with that, and then the available space, was pretty tight. So doing the real-time projectile motion was something that I arrived at pretty quickly, and so what I did is translated what amount to the flight projectile, did the time, constrain the time based on the height, the max height that the ball would allow for a regular ground stroke, which would be 6 feet over the net. That was what it was constrained to, and then a lob would have been twice or more than that. I can't remember, but if I had an open-ended algorithm, if you wanted to do the calculus of projectile motion, where your derivative from time and the whole acceleration bit, it would have been way too much for the little 8-bit as far as time was concerned. So we constrained it and made it table-driven. So basically, you did the math of the distance of the shot that you wanted to hit, from point A to point B, gave you a distance, and then you just plug in the time based on the drop of 6 feet. And so, it was a straight table lookup from there to get the ball to go from A to B with a particular height. And then, doing the AI for it, so that you had a partner that was a computer-driven AI. I remember when the console first came out, there were four joysticks for it, and they decided to reduce the cost, and they came out with a 2-joystick version, midstream of the tennis title that I was working on. I was a little upset about that because I thought 4-player games, were really fun. From my experience with Eliminator at Sega Kremlin, we used to spend our lunches, doing last-in games, round robin, around the console, the Eliminator console. We had a lot of fun playing that with Larry Clegg and Steve Hostetler. And the crew there, who George eventually brought up to work on the Coleco platform up there at Atari. So
tennis was going to be a 4-player game, and then you just had to pull some code out of it to change it back into a 1 or 2-player game?
Well, I kind of took liberties, and I kept the 4-player version in. There was a special key code that you could put, and the Sean Special would show up, which would basically be for those folks that had a 4-player console, they could still have 4-player doubles with a 4-player joystick. But,
nice.
So I kept that in there. That was an Easter egg, something I didn't tell. I think I might have told Joel Oberman, who was the product manager of it, but or maybe Condon. There were only a few people at management level that said, okay, they gave me a wink and a nod and said, well, that's all right. But at the end of the project, we were a ROM-based cartridge, and I think my code fell short of just short of 4 proms, 16K, and they wanted me to shave it down so it would fit into 3K.
Oh, 3K?
So, 12K, I'm sorry.
Oh, 3 proms, okay.
Yeah, so from just short of 16 down to 12. So I had to cut quite a bit to fit.
So what went away? What was lost? Or did you just make it more efficient, or did you have to pull features?
Well, I shaved a lot of the sound effects. Audio takes up quite a lot of data space.
Sure.
And I made the AI a little dumber. I think we shaved I don't know. I don't think we shaved much in the way of the animation that Dave Jolly did. Now, if you want to try something really hard, take a player's stroke, animation, and reduce it down to, what was that? The 6 feet. I mean, it was like crude. It was like working with bricks, colored bricks, as far as animation. So I think Dave Jolly did an awesome job of translating the player swing and the motion into the bit depth, that coarse medium, if you will, of the graphics environment. So I thought he did an awesome job doing that. And so, yeah, the AI got gutted quite a bit. It was a lot dumber. So, you'll find times where, a runner will go off into the corner and just like, spaz because it didn't know what to do. And that was part of it.
Yeah.
And some of the motion, some of the shot selection, I think, was taken out. So saved quite a bit just in trimming out a lot of the audio. And it worked. And I was happy to get it done. And it was good practice for me. At that point I'd done 2 games, so the team there started to look at me from a different perspective. I think okay, this guy's doing okay. He can write games, so that was pretty cool. And I got a lot of help. I mean, there was a couple of guys. Collins, I think, was one of the guys I'd talked to quite a bit. Jim Heather was the guy who did the football title, and they were doing a baseball title as well. That I got to experiment with some of the audio on that. A good collaborative team. I really enjoyed working there and developing titles there with George and the crew there. It was one of the more fonder memories of doing development that I recall.
Awesome. So was Pengo next after you finished?
Pengo was next after that. That was the coin-op version of that.
Yeah, so you signed that. I mean, they're sitting around the table going, okay, we've got these 5 games to do. Who wants Pengo? Or is it just like, hey, one day, done?
I would have loved to have been more knowledgeable about how that worked because I was keen to do a 2600 title because all of the guys that were doing 2600 titles were making really good bonus money. I mean, we were participating, I think, at a 10 cent per share. It was called the royalty back when I started. They changed the name to a bonus after they wanted to change whether it was something we could take with us or not. Mm-hmm. But basically 10 cents a unit went into the bonus or the pool. Part of the bonus went to the regular quarterly profit sharing that the entire team participated in, and then another piece was just for the team that developed the title. So with the 5200, you were guaranteed 400 unit run first out of the gate. So when you finished the project, you got an advance on 400,000 units sold. Mm-hmm. So at the end of the project, you got a $40,000 good attaboy to split with the team, right?
And that's just in addition to whatever salary you're making.
Yeah, at that point, I think it was around $30K a year that we were paid. Right. And we were kind of pampered.
That's a nice little bonus then.
It was a great little bonus. I was young, had a wife and a kid who didn't see me very much, unfortunately. But I had my, which probably kept me from getting into quite a bit of trouble, because I had a wife and a kid to go home to. Didn't get to party as hard as a lot of the other people that worked there. But
so was there parties and hot tubs and cocaine and all sorts of stuff going on?
I'm sure there was, as close as I was to a lot of the folk, I was still a married guy.
Right.
So the reins were held pretty tight on my end. I enjoyed the company of the people that I was working with when I had a chance to enjoy their company, but the schedules and the projects that I got assigned, I was working pretty hard. I was playing pretty hard. They had a nice game room there, that we went to when we needed to step away from a problem for a while.
Mm-hmm.
Fully stocked game room with all the coin op stuff in there. You'd usually find a lot of the senior people in there playing Rapping Defender. Todd Fry would do that, just the guy was crazy good. So, yeah. We were professional game developers. We had to play and understand what gameplay was all about. So, George Kish recognized that, and he brought that culture with him from Sega Gremlin. So, he really nurtured the understanding of what, the gameplay was all about, and that's where the focus was. So, in that regard, I was spoiled in my training and upbringing as far as game development was concerned.
Nice. All right, so tell me about making Pengo. Were you familiar with the game before you started?
Not much, no. It was fairly new product. I thought it was pretty cute, and it looked pretty like a slam dunk, to me. So I brought with me, some of the code from the tennis title, where basically the object execution queue. And I think I want to say that Mimi Rogers, I don't think that's her name now, was doing the graphics. It was really cute. The gameplay was pretty, it was pretty much a finite state machine kind of implementation. And he did a great job on the audio and the music. And
yeah, the music's fun, for sure.
Yeah, and all of a sudden I started collecting all this penguin paraphernalia in the lab where I was working. I shared the lab with Frank Hausman and Alan Moss, who did one of the first karate games, the fighting games that I'd ever seen. He was doing a really good job on that. And I don't know that that ever got out. Alan did the breakout title for the 5200, so for every unit sold, he was doing pretty good. I think he was the only guy who actually made more than the first upfront bonus on the 5200. Yeah, Pengo was no big deal. I had the code associated with it. I didn't slack off or anything. I got started on it pretty well, and I think we did that in under plan and budget. So that was a pretty easy one to do.
I'm watching a video of it right now. There's a lot of colors going on in Pengo. I mean, there's multicolored sprites and a lot of things moving on at once. It looks like it might have been a challenge to do that with the hardware that you had.
Actually, the 5200 was not all that complicated with the display lists and the graphics modes that we selected. By that time, that was like the third title that I had done on the 5200, and the animators were getting really good, at pulling in the special effects out of the just. I think it was 8 bits of color, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So RGB, so we had 3 bits of red, 3 bits of green, and maybe 2 bits of the other one. So,
same. Sorry, go ahead.
The palette with it. That was all in the. Release control of that to the graphics and the audio people to do their job. They did a great job there. I was very proud of them and very happy to work with them.
So same sort of deal where you finished the 5200 version and then you converted it to the 400, 800?
Yeah, and that was just, swapping in a different control set. As far as the controllers were concerned, the keypad, for the start and the restart and whatnot. And that was a really simple, joystick and a button game. So very simple.
Right. Yeah.
Not quite like Defender as far as the inputs are concerned. we'd changed, some of the how the maze of blocks was originally oriented. I think we had a finite set of those, just to keep the count down for the ROM space.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't totally random. I mean, we had to have a certain amount of what do you call it, pathways and obstructions for the blocks, and how an enemy would materialize out of the back cube, as it were. So we're kind of constrained on there. So some of the mazes will resemble initials initially before they dissolve. So
initials, you said?
Initials, yeah.
It's kind of another Easter egg then. Sort of,
yeah. Because they didn't give us recognition on the box at Atari.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I think that's one of the reasons the guys left Atari and went and formed
Activision.
And
maybe Magic too. Yeah.
Right. So
yeah.
The folks that stayed, like Howard and Jim Heater, and the senior members, and I call them senior members with a lot of respect, because they'd been there, way before I showed up. They benefited from the people who left to form the Magic and Intellivision, because Atari responded, and wrote up the bonus plan, or the royalty plan, as they called it back then, to keep, the IP and the people who knew how to code the 2600 in-house, so they could still, service the market, as it were.
So what happened after you finished Pengo?
After I finished Pengo, I finally got what I always wanted was to do a 2600 title. I got selected to do the Frank Herbert Dune title for the 2600, and I was cranking away on the game design. Just finished the...
That's what you said, the what's the Frank Herbert?
The Dune. D-U-N-E, Frank Herbert's Dune.
Oh, okay, Dune, okay, yeah, okay. Sorry.
The movie.
Right.
So I was a happy camper, and then all of a sudden the bottom fell out. I just finished doing the design review with the senior staff of the game Dune title. They had to approve the design. So I was really happy to get going on that, and the bottom fell out of the market. Atari, I think it was the first quarter was $500 million loss. Second one was closer to $300 million loss, and the next thing we knew that we were sold to the Tramiel folk.
Mm-hmm.
And then about that time, I decided, well, this this is not the happy place that it used to be. I think our salary was cut in half. It was going to be an advance on any royalties we were going to get.
Mm-hmm.
So about that time, Condon Brown and William Lord were looking for the next thing, and the software machine was just starting up. So I was brought on board with Condon and William Lord and to do edutainment titles. We thought we were going to do more in the way of education.
So I'm not very familiar with the software machine. This was a company that edutainment was their shtick.
Yeah, we were a soft startup.
Mm-hmm.
Hat in hand, looking for venture capital, and we were going to be doing edutainment using the 800. Primarily was our thought, but we didn't care what platform it was going to be. We were just going to leverage our skills at doing game development to put together edutainment titles. We were talking with a lot of the educational publishers, Simon Schuster and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
It was characterized that we were only 2 weeks away from funding when I left Atari to join them, and then that 2 weeks turned into a year and a year and a half. So we starved quite a bit.
You guys were starving the whole time.
Yeah, I eventually went bankrupt as a result of not getting a salary and making the payments and stuff like that. So.
Should you have stayed at Atari in retrospect, or that was kind of a sinking ship too? So.
Well, it's a hard call to make. I mean, by that time, I think the landfills in El Paso with the cartridges, and I think what happened is a lot of people. It's a very cyclic thing. I mean, if you've been paying attention to the gaming industry for any period of time, you'll notice that there's a big spike in interest and involvement. In the I want to say the more classic. Studios, will get involved, and of course, the entrance fee these days is way high. I mean, you're talking $8 million to $10 million in cost of goods for development of the titles these days. With the 3D assets, you have to bring to bear. When I was doing video games, the ratio between code to data, for the assets was, closer to 50-50, and then it slides down. I think there might be 5% code, and the rest is all assets. And,
Yeah.
Right. So it's a big burden, to do that kind of thing. And when the studios, the film folk got involved, the marketing side of it was already pretty much a done deal. You're leveraging the marketing dollars to bring out a movie title. So, the brand recognition for a game, leverages the already existing branding for a movie title. It's really easy, to do something that people already know versus doing an original title, which is something I don't think Atari ever understood. So a lot of the stuff that we were presented with to work on was something that had already been established. We were just doing a conversion of an already pre-existing expression of an idea or a story. It's not a whole lot in the way of doing original type.
So when you were at Software Machine, the company did some Atari 8-bit stuff, but you didn't work on any when you were there, is that right?
I didn't, and I don't think we did any Atari 8-bit stuff while we were there at TSM. I think, we were given an early Nintendo box to play with to see what we could do with that. We were doing some prototyping on the Nintendo box with a crayon title, Magic Crayon. Was one of the educational, storybooks. And then as we were struggling to acquire funding, we got a couple of contracts to keep us alive, through the generosity of Nolan and his conglomerate there at Catalyst Technologies. So we did an early prototype of a game on the first Mac called Mousetracks, through Axlon, one of the companies there at Catalyst, and then we did a fashion product for the X64, the Commodore Portable. Mm-hmm. So, fashion consultants would go door to door with this little portable X64. And
the SX64? Yeah.
Right? Remember that one? And
sure.
There was a light wand that was custom made by, I want to say Courtney Heater was the gadget guru there at Catalyst Technologies. And he developed a sensor with a white light. And, you put this wand on a person's skin, and it would tell you, sample the color and tell you what color their skin was. And together with their eye color and hair color, we'd generate this... what do they call it, a swatch or a palette, that the gals use, so if you were a summer or winter or fall, color compatible fashion thing. So that's what we did for that. And those were the two revenue contracts that we had coming in that was split more ways than it should have. So all of us, were starving and divvying up what revenues came into the shop as needs arose. So the software machine didn't survive that, or at least I didn't survive it. I just couldn't work for free.
Sure.
I had a wife and kids, so that pretty much put me under. That was my first bankruptcy and my first divorce as a result of that.
Oh, man.
Startup companies, you got to be careful, what you sign up for. It's a very deep emotional and spiritual commitment, when you get that fever, as it were. So.
Yeah. So, what haven't I asked you about the Atari years? What should I ask you? What do you want to tell me that we haven't touched on yet?
I don't know. Howard was starting to put together a nice little story there, I think. I think he had a pilot for a TV show that he had a couple of episodes cranked up for, where he was interviewing quite a few people.
Oh, Howard Scott Warshaw? Yeah, he came out with a DVD set of early Atari. Yeah. I haven't actually seen most of it, but.
Yeah, I was just one out of 40 people working there.
Yeah.
And had a great little test team. I don't know. We had an internal test group that was really good, made up of I want to say early 20s, late teens. Steve Apour was one of the testers there. I think he's a studio chief at can't remember the name of the studio up there in the Bay Area that he's run. He's still in the biz. And
I have an interview lined up. I have not talked to him yet, with a guy. He's been in the video game industry all his life, but it started when he was 11 years old. He was a tester for 5,200 games.
No kidding.
Yeah, I'm interested to talk to him.
And he's still doing it. Yeah, I left. After the software machine folded, I went off and did like regular embedded system stuff for a while, and I came back into the game business through Cinematronics. Briefly, they were in Chapter 11 while I was there, and then I went to lottery and wagering systems for a while, and then I came back and did development at GTE Imagitrek. That was for the Sega box that came out, and then back to Blue Sky working with George. So George hired me 3 times during the course of my career in video games.
Nice.
And so I left the game industry in '96. Was the last participation. I went to go do the World Book Encyclopedia after that. Yeah,
it's another dying business.
Right?
Yeah. If you could send a message to the Atari community, the 800 and 5,200 users, and you can right now, what would you tell them?
I had a lot of fun. That little 8-bit guy was a lot of fun, but it was just another stepping stone in the technology development. I really liked the open-ended opportunity that you had for game design in the home theater as opposed to the coin-op. So, I was really happy with how things evolved after that. Fractilus, I remember Fractilus when that came out. I thought that was awesome.
Yeah, that's a good one.
It kind of hinted at, where the games were going. So no, I was really proud of my history there, and I enjoyed it. It's not always easy to do something creative, or what do I want to say? Anyway, we're struggling artists. What can I say? We're trying to make the best of. So we have aspirations and an expression in mind, and then somebody gives you like sticks and rocks to do it with, because where your mind sees an idea, and then the reality is the technology is a good 20 years away from you realizing that. But no, I had a lot of fun. For me, that was something I enjoyed very much, and I shared the enthusiasm with the people that I worked with, and I enjoyed my time very much.
Cool. Thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Thanks. Have a great Sunday.
Okay, you too. Thank you, Kevin.
If you enjoyed these interviews and would like to contribute something, I encourage you instead to donate to one of our favorite organizations, the Internet Archive, at archive.org. The Internet Archive is a nonprofit digital library with the stated mission of universal access to all knowledge. They've done incredible things to preserve computer history, including hosting thousands of programs in an in-browser Atari emulator, creating the Wayback Machine, and offering full-page scans of countless Atari computer books and magazines. Make your tax-deductible contribution at archive.org/donate.